I think there is a norm that after school, you either work for the government or companies that have already been established. And people just follow the pattern and not even take time to search within themselves to realize the potentials that they have and what societal problems they can also solve.
Part of the process is one, writing it down and it becoming or manifesting into something that you believe in so much that you're willing to do a lot of the work when the lights are off, right? So that when the lights come on, you've actually been practicing, preparing, you've been visualizing. And sometimes, you know, the vision might be big enough where it scares you, but that's also a good thing to have, right? Because deep down inside, every individual knows, am I working hard enough for something I want?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Joining me today is Dr. Ismail Badjie, a Gambian American. Ismail is the founder of Innovarx Global Health, a premier healthcare service with a mission to transform healthcare delivery in sub-Saharan African countries. Previously, he served in the role of a pharmacy manager of the second largest US-based pharmacy store chain and has also managed 24-hour community pharmacy that specialized in pharmaceutical compounding, HIV therapy, and adult immunizations. He also holds a 6 Sigma Green Belt in healthcare focused on increasing the efficiencies and also the outcomes in healthcare organizations. I am particularly very thrilled and inspired by the achievement of this brilliant, young, amazing scientist, and also very curious to hear about his journey. So on today's session, he will talk to us about his journey to establishing such a fast expanding global health service in the US and in Gambia, in Africa, and also expanding to other African countries. He will also share with us some of the challenges he has faced and what has kept him going, what has kept him persistent and always pushing. So on this note, welcome, Ismail.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel honored. That was way better of an introduction than I deserve, but I'm honored to be here. Thank you for sharing your platform with me. Definitely appreciate it.
Excited to also have you here. Like I earlier mentioned, we will be talking about your journey as a science entrepreneur and the cost that was involved in that. But before we even delve more into that topic, would you like to share with us how it all started? When did the thought of being a science entrepreneur and setting up your own healthcare system even come into mind?
No, thank you. I think, hindsight is always 20/20. I don't think, when you look back, I don't think there's a light bulb moment in my professional career where I woke up and said, you know what, now it's time to entrepreneur, right? I don't think that moment ever happened. I do come from an entrepreneurial family through my mother's lineage. So I consider myself a third generation entrepreneur, not from a healthcare standpoint, but I grew up with my mom running retail stores, selling, women's clothing, furniture. She took that business over from her mother, my grandmother. But at any point in my life, did I think I was going to be an entrepreneur that I am today? But that's where I think the business element comes from. And I think a lot of my lessons in business, I think I started business school very early because of my mother. I just didn't realize that I'll utilize all these skills of, finding something that's valuable acquiring something that's valuable and finding a customer, a client who you sell whatever that is that's valuable, and you get a positive reaction from it, which I think at the core of entrepreneurship is just that. Now, as a science student, I think I fell in love with chemistry very early in high school. But I started, my university, I was going to university to be a civil engineer. Why? I mean, to this day, I still don't know why. Maybe because, African parents is either lawyer, doctor, or engineer. And, a
Yes.
civil engineer sounded nice. But I changed my major to chemistry 2 weeks into university. And I think the rest is history. So yeah, I think from chemistry, undergraduate degree in chemistry, and then typically with a chemistry degree, you decide, okay, what do you want to do next? Are you going to go the PhD route to do research? Are you going to do medical school? Are you going to do dental school? Are you going to do pharmacy school? So I was weighing out all those options. I had an opportunity to visit Purdue University my junior year in college. Purdue had been one of the top 10 pharmacy schools in the world for a very long time. And I fell in love with, pharmacy in a sense that I felt it was a unique skill set that the gap between how pharmacy practice is in the US and how it is in Africa was so wide that I honestly saw it as an opportunity. So I think Innovarx was planted in me when I started realizing the disparity in health and how pharmacy, I just fell in love with the profession. And I think Walgreens, afforded me a lot of opportunities to be a good employee, to do my apprenticeship, which is so important. And out of that came Innovarx, because I honestly felt like Africa's challenges have been around for a while. I think we deserve better, but we have to create better. So what people saw as problems, I saw as opportunities, and I ran into it full speed ahead.
Wow, that's amazing that you share all of that. And I did ask that question because I think there is a norm that after school, you either work for the government or companies that have already been established. And people just follow the pattern and not even take time to search within themselves to realize the potentials that they have and what societal problems they can also solve. So what was different in your case? Even though you mentioned that this was something you had seen your parents do, what made you still decide to break this pattern that we obviously see among students these days?
No, and I think the pattern, ironically, that's the most important aspect of your professional journey, is joining a company and working and learning a business. There's only one difference, right? If you work for a corporation, a government, or any entity, you're doing business using other people's money. So you're learning the trade. Like, I learned how to run a business because Walgreens was paying me to run their business, right? All my clinical skills were sharper because I had opportunities to the university that Purdue was, with my undergraduate studies. So I think, and oftentimes I think that's so important as we have conversations about entrepreneurship. I tell people my first job was when I was 28, because with a doctor of pharmacy degree, you're in school forever, it feels like, right? So it took me 10 years of working in the industry, in the community pharmacy industry, to build a confidence and certainty and really test that this is what I want to do before leaving what most people will consider the mountaintop. You've arrived, you're a working professional, you're a doctor, your family's proud, and then decide to blow it all up and then start from scratch, where now you're no longer doing business with other people's money. The responsibility is on you to execute. So I think there's a trade-off. So I think it's important, especially though, if you feel like all entrepreneurship does, I believe, it gives you creative freedom at a high price. It's creative freedom at a high price, because there's a price you pay to have the opportunity to create, because there's a burden, versus being a caretaker of somebody else's creation. I think that's the difference. So some people, I tell them, being an amazing employee could be what you should do, because you're designed to be an excellent caretaker of somebody's creation that you believe in. Because on the other side, having the freedom to create comes with a very high price that a lot of people are unwilling to pay, right? I think that's the difference. But I believe in apprenticeship and the experience that happens before you want to be an entrepreneur.
Amazing. So you talked about price, the cost that is involved, and you even talked about the fact that you spent an extra 10 years also working to get more experience. Every journey takes time, commitment, and effort. So I'm glad that you talk about all these things that you had to do to be able to get more prepared for what you wanted to do. Would you like to share some other intentional steps you took to make this dream you had a reality?
I think planning. I tell people, it's just as the old saying goes, if they gave you 7 years to cut down a tree, spend the first 6 years sharpening your axe, right? And I think sharpening your axe means a lot of moments where you obviously put ideas on paper, because I think any idea is a gift from God. It's for you, right? Everybody has imaginations, creative ideas that God gifts you. What you do with that is on you, because there's a process, right? So I think part of the process is, one, writing it down and it becoming or manifesting into something that you believe in so much that you're willing to do a lot of the work when the lights are off, right? So that when the lights come on, you've actually been practicing, preparing, you've been visualizing. So, and I tell people a lot of things that's happening in the company now, it's magical in a sense that these were things on pieces of paper, sticky note. Okay, I want a delivery driver's uniform to look like this. I want this to look like that. And now seeing it come to life, it also feels like, well, it was supposed to be that way, just because you've actually been intentional about it as well. So I think so much of the process is writing it down. And sometimes, you know, the vision might be big enough where it scares you, but that's also a good thing to have. But I think if anything, it teaches you how to be accountable with your own actions, right? Because deep down inside, every individual knows, am I working hard enough for something I want? And you can't cheat the process. I think there's no shortcut to cheating the process as well, too. So you'll have a lot of moments where you have to stand in the mirror. And that's why I always use the maps and mirrors analogy. You could have a map of where you want to go, but you'll never be successful in any professional endeavor if you don't always have a mirror in your back pocket. Because sometimes when you get lost, even though you have the map, you get lost, you have to pull out the mirror and check yourself.
Yes.
To see if the person that you see in the mirror still wants to go in that direction towards that destination, before you could autocorrect and then navigate towards where you want to go. So I think that maps and mirrors is always a good analogy to use. And I think that's how I describe preparing for an entrepreneur. You could know what you want to do. You could write it down, but how many times do you stand in the mirror and ask yourself, have I done the prerequisite work to be able to bring this to fruition? And you can't cheat the process. You really can't.
Wow. Okay. This is getting exciting. So after you have, asked yourself all of that and gone through the process to prepare yourself, I can still imagine you now sharing that dream with family and friends. Hey, I'm going to set my own healthcare system, and this is what I want to do. Did people believe in you when you started?
Yeah, I think it's funny. You get two things. I think people that knew who I was knew that I was capable of dreaming this big, because I've always seen impossible as just what we put in our minds, right?
Ooh.
I think throughout schooling, a lot of people knew me. And I started talking about this very early. So there's people in undergrad, people in pharmacy school that I was like, I'm gonna build my version of a healthcare system. And I'm gonna take everything that's working in the US and I'm gonna make it happen in Africa. But you go through that phase where people are like, okay, there you go, you're talking big and X, Y, and Z. But when you're actually doing it you almost have to have a level of, you have to have a very comfortable relationship with discomfort to be an entrepreneur, right? Because you have to be able to lean into discomfort in a way that it's not logical to a lot of people, because the average person who's thinking from a, I guess, logical standpoint will tell you, if you're in school till 28, you get out of school, you have a job that's paying you 6 figures. To most people, you've arrived at the destination, right? Mm-hmm. So to convince those individuals, which sometimes even it could be people that love you dearly, yes, that now that I've arrived, I'm gonna jump off the mountain to go and try to move this mountain, right? It's not logical. And that's why it's not for every single person, because once you jump off that mountain, right? So you get people that ask you, are you sure you're okay? Why do you want to do this? Why this big? Why now? Like, this is the moment where you should be, a working professional, enjoying a good time, living with your wife and kids in a white picket fence, the American dream. Yes. That's what you're supposed to do, right? But to make the decision that, okay, actually now I'm gonna blow all of that up and do this, you get to know who God is in a very personal way. Yes. But it comes along with it. I think any entrepreneurial journey is a spiritual journey. It's not a religious journey, but I think it's a spiritual journey. Yeah. Because it will test your faith and it will test your why. But the more people see that, okay, this guy is actually not crazy. He's really doing this, right? And then they start coming back. And I think you need that. You need some people to tell you also, I actually think you could do it. But you also need people to tell you, you're not even ready. Like, you could barely show up to work on time and you want to be the one person who's building a company. So you get it both ways, right?
Yes.
You get it both ways, but I think you embrace it. And I think, once again, if you have a comfortable relationship with discomfort, that's the first step. Yeah, it's the first step.
Wow. Yeah. So my guess is many people will quit because it can be really hard. But I am so excited that you didn't. Mm-hmm. So would you like to share with us 3 things you think have kept you persistent in achieving the goals you set for yourself?
One, honestly, I think when you talk about spirituality, I'm not talking about religion.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that we're all God's instruments, right? Mm-hmm. God created you as a vessel to make something in this world better, right? Some people spend a lifetime trying to chase it and can't find it. Some people, God will show it to you and see, what are you going to do about it? So I think once you make a decision that bold, you have to trust that everything in your life that happened up until that point was preparing you for this moment. Like the fact that, my grandmother was an entrepreneur. I saw my mom, who didn't go to business school, run a business. How dare I, with a doctorate degree, not be able to run a business when my mom doesn't even have a college degree, right?
Yes.
I grew up, my family lived in 6 different countries. So I grew up seeing the healthcare in general as from a global perspective, right? And I think fundamentally, on a personal level, I didn't get to know my grandfather. I was telling you about, who was an entrepreneur, but she died at 56 from diabetes and hypertension. Just because she lived in the Gambia or in Africa, where it's common for a 6-year-old to die from diabetes and hypertension,
Mm.
As a U.S. healthcare professional, it is not common. It should not happen, right? So I think those things, that's one. The second thing is like, once you start something, starting a company is like having a child. It is actually having a child.
Mm.
And once you bring a child into this world, there's a personal contract that you have with the child where no matter how hard it gets, no matter how tired you are, no matter if your boss is up at night, it's raining outside, you woke with a headache, fundamentally, you brought the child into the world and that child needs milk. So if you're tired, the child needs milk. If you
Yes.
have 2 hours a day because you made the decision to bring the child into this world, right? And lastly, you just have to find a strong support system, right? That could be your people that truly, truly believe and love you, who they will allow you to lean on them when you get tired, when you want to quit, because you're going to have moments where you would question, why am I doing this? I don't have to, right? But if you have like a family system, which I do, that believes in me significantly, they give me the affordability to be able to take certain risks, knowing that if I fall, they don't only catch me, but they're like that gymnastics net where it bounces you and throws you back up higher, right? So I think those three things, believe in your why, a strong support system, and then your faith in God.
Yeah.
And then I think those are the three. It's always been those three for me.
Wow. Amazing. You have so many accomplishments, and I am a strong advocate of celebrating people for that. I believe sharing and celebrating people first inspire them to keep being more. And also, it helps the younger generation know that these things are actually possible. So in view of that, I would like you to take the platform and share with us some of the accomplishments. I know there are many, so just mention a few that you would like to share with us.
Well, it's funny because success and accomplishment is so subjective, right? Because if from the outside looking in, what a lot of people consider nation, to me, it's like a pit stop, right? So I honestly don't even describe myself as accomplished. I think I've been fortunate to be in a position to have impact in whatever it is that I'm doing at that time, right? So you could be, okay, I have a doctor of pharmacy, that's fine. I work for a really good company and I was successful, I was a leader, that's fine. I think when the time comes for me to label something as successful in Innovarx would be when somebody else's grandmother doesn't die at 56 from diabetes or hypertension. When African people on the continent don't have to sit across from somebody to get a visa just because they need a medical service, but they're actually having the medical service at home. When people in the diaspora could sleep at night knowing that if it's something health-wise, buying a plane ticket to send them over. So I think that's how I define success. It has literally nothing to do with me. Obviously, I have a daughter who's my world, right? But also, I don't want her to have to be a martyr to do something so extraordinary just to be able to live a fulfilled life. I think at the end of the day, how she views me as a father is what I care more about being accomplished at than a lot of the things that people will label you as, which is nice. I'm appreciative of it, especially if it inspires somebody. But I think I don't like celebrating something that's just the beginning of what it can be, because I think it lowers the bar in terms of what we really can achieve as a continent, as a people. Yeah. And I've always kept that mindset to keep me grounded and, just use that map and that mirror for me. Yeah.
Wow. That's even more inspiring. And I am also very passionate about the African continent as a whole. Mm-hmm. And so I like to ask questions about how we can achieve the dream of having other great scientists and entrepreneurs from Africa. And most importantly, what role we can all play to make that possible. Would you like to expand on that a little?
Absolutely. You know, I'm a Pan-Africanist at heart, and I'm unapologetic about it. And I do believe that we have the makings of turning Africa into the most powerful continent in the next 50 years. And I'll tell you why. Individuals like you, individuals like myself, we've lived in Africa, we've lived in the West. From a success standpoint, we've accomplished certain things that should give us the privilege of living an even more comfortable life in the West. Meaning we have the best ideas around the world in our mind, and we have the context of how people exist and what we need. If you combine those two together, there's absolutely nothing on the face of this earth that we cannot accomplish as Black people. And when I say Africans, it's like every Black person in the world, right? If the moment we decide that we want to turn Africa to the utopia that it can be, it'll happen, because we're blessed with minds, we're blessed with natural resources, we're blessed with everything that we could exist in an ecosystem. So it's just a matter of if, not when, because a lot of countries in Africa are young, right? The USA is over 400 years, right? Gambia is 65 years old. So we can't compare a nation's chapter 20 to our chapter 1, right? And I think the fact that we're having these conversations right now, like you know, you've lived in Ghana, Gambia, I've traveled around the continent. Anybody paying attention to Africa will know that Africa is heading in a direction where our train is speeding up while a lot of places are slowing down, which is why people are investing in Africa. We just got to make sure we create wealth for Africans as well too on the continent, because everybody's running and coming to Africa for a reason. So but I'm a firm believer in that, and I think there's power in us thinking as one. There's power in us believing in each other, and also purging out any notion that what's African cannot be excellent, not on an African level, but be excellent on a global level. Because we're excellent when we leave. If you take a brilliant African and you drop him anywhere in the world, he'll rise to the top in that society. But if you bring him back on the continent, the honest truth is people will look at him like, you know, somebody half as qualified who's not African, they'll believe in him more. So I think part of it, we have to be honest with who we are and what we've been. And hopefully we become the generation where when I see you, I see the best in you. And I'll never see you as less than something else. But I'm a firm believer in where the continent is going, because it's already started happening.
Oh, wow. I think you said it all. Yeah, you said it all. Thank you so much for sharing that. So to round up this section, I would like you to share some of the things you would want others to learn from your story. And if you have any final words you would like to also share with our viewers who plan on building a career in science.
No, I think science, you know, science is so special because science is all about discovery. You never know if you've arrived at the right destination. But I think God made human beings superior beings because of curiosity and the ability to process imagination, right? And I think anybody in STEM has an opportunity to change the world. And it could feel very small, but the more we get exposed, the more we get curious, the more things like technology is allowing, you know, people who were less than for so long an ability to restore their dignity, level the playing field. That is such a big opportunity where sometimes you have to listen to what is being planted in you and believe that it is possible, right? And I think everything in life believes in, you know, starts with you believing that you can, you believing that you're good enough, believing that you deserve better. And the rest, you have to trust the process, because to whom much is given, much is expected. So, you know, you just can't hope that you want things better. I think it's taking ownership and learning from people who've been there before, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants like our parents, realizing that they ran the race as fast as they could in spite of all their challenges. So how dare us, you know, in this generation to not leave it in a better place for the generation that's coming behind us. And I think that comes with a level of intentionality in all our efforts as well too. But yeah, I think if anything, just believe that impossible is only what you kind of, what limitations you put around your mind as well too. But yeah, that's pretty much the end of the thing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing your story on this platform. Yeah. I so much believe that your experience and the points you shared will go a long way to inspire our viewers. So to our viewers, please make sure to check out Innovarx Global Health. And if you're in Gambia or in the US or in Ghana, which it's expanding to in Ghana too, and I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, Ghana and Nigeria in 2022. So we're excited about it.
That is so exciting. So Ghana, Nigeria, make sure to check out. And this is coming from our own in Africa. So like what we earlier mentioned, believing in what we have and also supporting the vision. So we will take a break here, and in our next video, Dr. Badjie will talk with us about non-communicable diseases and their prevalence. And so thank you for joining us on this episode.